What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be going over some different press releases versus all types of press coverages. So there's 6 types of press coverage. So you have head-up press, you have inside shade press, outside shade press, and then you have something called catch man, where the DB is maybe like 2 to 3 yards off, and that would be the same thing: head-up catch, inside shade catch, and outside shade catch. So we're going to be going over 6 different press releases that you can use for all of those looks, okay? So this first example here is a head-up press DB. Now, a great release that I like to use for that is something called a split release. So a split release is pretty much exactly how it sounds. It's where your front foot goes out and then your back foot goes straight up, and both feet are trying to make contact with the ground at the exact same time. So we're going to look at this example here first, and then we'll break down the details of this so you guys can use this on your own. So this receiver splits, but he also adds like kind of like a split jab to the move. I call it like a split sway, if you will, but it's really just to kind of move that DB to the inside even when you're splitting your feet. So the reason why we love this versus head-up press is sometimes when a DB's in head-up press, he has one of 3 options. He could either stay head-up, shade to the inside, or shade to the outside. DBs will play head-up sometimes when they're trying to disguise their coverage. So when we do this split release and both feet hit the ground at the exact same time, this receiver's wanting to run a fade route. So a fade route is one of those routes where, like, generally you're probably going to release to the outside. Not many people release to the inside on a fade route just because it's harder to stack back over the top of the DB and give quarterback room to fade you open, right? But let's say it's a post route, right, where you could release inside or you could release outside. The split release is great because let's say on the snap of the ball, you do this split, back foot goes up, front foot goes out, you're in a position of balance. And you see how he has this slight forward lean with his upper half. He's not standing straight up. A lot of receivers, when they do this, they stand up and expose their chest. That's an easy jam for the DB. But let's say on the snap of the ball, you do that split release and you want to take an outside release, but this DB jumps. He disguises his leverage and he jumps to the outside. It's very easy because you're in this position of balance or both feet hit the ground at the same time. You could just push off of this outside foot and take the inside release. It's a great release to be able to react. That's why we love it versus head-up press. But now this DB stays, and so what this receiver does, I want you to pay attention to his upper half. This is that like sway element to it. Because a DB, when he's in man, he is going to be watching our hips. So if we're trying to get him to jump to the inside so I could take an outside release, he splits, but you see how his hips turn to the inside, his shoulders, his head give this little sway to the inside without really moving his feet, and that gets that DB to just hesitate. If we get him to just hesitate and I can beat him by a step to the outside, I can win on this fade, especially if I have some speed. So a great release you could use versus head-up press would be this split release, and you could add that sway element to it. Now, if you do this split and let's say you sway to the inside, and let's say you want to release outside, but that DB overcommits and jumps to the outside, bam, I can just put the brakes on and take the inside release. That's why this release is so great. So let's play this again full speed, and then we'll get into a release you could use when the DB is playing outside shade press man coverage. Now, before we get into the next 5 releases here, you guys, if you are a wide receiver and you would like an 8-week training schedule that you can follow this offseason, go to that very first link in the description below for our elite wide receiver training package. What you'll get access to is 8 weeks of daily wide receiver gym workouts, so specific to the wide receiver position, and 8 weeks of field workouts that wide receivers can do for their route running, their press releases, and their hands. We map it out into a schedule for you. We also include rest days, obviously, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We give you the exact sets and reps to follow, and we also include a video example of each gym exercise and each on-field drill. We also throw in with our elite wide receiver training package a 4-week speed and agility training package so you guys can help your speed improve, because that is super important at the wide receiver position. So guys, if you want access to that, go to our very first link in the description below. We'd love to get you on that. Let's get back to this video. Now, this next release, fellas, is going to be versus a DB who's an outside shade press coverage. So when a DB is an outside shade press man, right, how we can tell, I know it's kind of tough to tell in this example because you can't really see the DB. Pay attention to his feet. If his feet, or I guess you could say, like, let's say the midline of his body, right? So the midline of the DB's body, imaginary line that goes from the top of his head all the way down to the ground. If that midline is even with the wide receiver's back foot, that means he's outside leverage. If that midline is even with the inside foot of the wide receiver, that means he's inside leverage. And then if that midline is even with the wide receiver's midline, that means he's head up. So when he's outside leverage, his goal is to take away the outside. He does not want us to run any type of outside breaking route. He doesn't want us to run an out route, a corner, a comeback, a fade. He wants to force everything to the inside where he has safety help. So with this wide receiver, he's going to be running like a 10 to 15 yard out route. What we want to do is we want to attack his leverage, make him think we are going where he doesn't want us to go. And a great release for that would be something called a wide step release. So we're going to play this clip full speed, and and then we'll break down the intricacies of this wide step release. A wide step is where your back foot jabs to the outside. Some people call it a jab step to make him think we're going to the outside. But this is set up by something called a kick step to try to sell the release a little bit more so we could get separation at the top of the break. So let's play this thing let's break this thing down. So you see the first step of this release, he doesn't just go straight to the jab, because if we're trying to get that DB to really move, we're trying to really threaten his leverage. We got to threaten that leverage by actually stepping like far and actually stepping with some speed. That's what makes him think we're going to the outside. So watch what his back foot does. You see how his back foot kicks behind his front foot. Essentially what he's doing there is he is loading up his hips. He's putting his hips in a more like explosive position so his hip can throw and sell to the outside. But that kick step also generates some speed, especially if you were stepping quick. You want to almost pretend there's a bug back here and you're trying to step on the bug. So when you do that and when you load up, you throwing your hip is a little bit easier. You could step a little bit further. Your hip goes with the foot. And remember, when we're in press coverage, that DB is going to be watching our hips. So that's what gets him to jump to the outside. It threatens his leverage. He takes that leverage step, but that gives us a free inside release so we could keep timing with my quarterback. And I'm not forcing an outside release where this DB is going to get hands to disrupt the timing. And my out route is way too wide. So we attack his leverage. Now, this is great, guys, even if you have to run an inside breaking route, like a post or a dig, because we just have to threaten his leverage. We can't just run away, and we can't just force the release to his leverage. We have to give him something that attacks him, and this wide step or jab step release with a kick step is a great way to do that. So that's an easy release you could use as a receiver versus outside shade press. Now, this next release, fellas, is going to be versus inside shade press. So pay attention to the wide receiver's feet again, right? So his inside foot and his outside foot, or I guess you could say like outside of the wide receiver's inside foot, his midline is even with the inside foot of the wide receiver. So that tells me he's inside shade. So think about it from the opposite perspective. We just talked about outside leverage. So now we got inside leverage. His goal is to not let us run to the inside. His goal is to force us to the outside where the sideline is his help. So we're running like a 10-yard out again here. So if we have to run this 10-yard out and we just take off to the outside, that DB is going to get hands on me. He's going to force me to the outside. And when I run my out route, I'm going to be right on the sideline. So what we have to do is we got to threaten his leverage. Make him think we're trying to release inside and run a dig. Make him think we're running a slant, a drag, something that's going to move him to the inside. So a great release to use on that would be something called a crossover. So a crossover is one more step than that wide step release that we were just going over. This receiver adds a little something extra to it, but I want you to pay attention to the second part of this release. So it kind of gives a little foot, 1-2, and threatens that DB's leverage so he could take that outside release and he wins on that out route. So watch him here. So he kind of does this little like kind of split, see where this DB's at, and then this first step right here, anytime you're doing a crossover move, fellas, how you want to think about it is that you are stepping in the direction you're wanting to go first. So if I'm trying to go to the outside, I want to step with my outside foot first. You could use this crossover the opposite way. If this DB's outside leverage and you want to use a crossover, you step with your inside foot first and then fake back to the outside. But I love this versus inside shade press. So this first step, though, in the direction that you're going, it's a short step. It's not a big, over-exaggerated step like the wide step or jab step release we just went over. The goal is to keep this cut inside of your shoulder frame so you could push off of this cut so your second cut sells a little bit more. Think of it like the kick step. We load our hips. On a crossover, you step inside your frame to kind of load up and push off of it. And when you push off of this foot, your hip, your shoulders, the step is a little bit more threatening to his leverage just to get him to hesitate. And if we get him to hesitate for just a split second, I could burst up full speed into my out route and then win. And because I threatened his leverage, I didn't even break his ankles off the line. You just threaten his leverage. That gives you more space for the quarterback to lead us. Anytime it's an outside breaking route, that's what you have to do. Now, let's say it's an inside breaking route, right? Like, let's say it's a post. You could do the exact same thing. You could do the exact same crossover, threaten his leverage, but now you take the outside release, and our goal would be to stack over the top of him. Because remember, we're not going to release inside when that DB has inside shade. So you just got to get comfortable releasing away from where that DB's leverage is, no matter what the route is. And those last two releases that we went over are very, very simple and very easy releases that you can do to attack the DB's leverage. Notice how, fellas, these releases we're going over, they're not crazy complicated. They're not these, fancy 15-step moves that you might see on social media. It's efficient. Can you be really good at the simple stuff? Like, think about it like fighting, right? Like, if you're fighting somebody, you're boxing, whatever the case may be, everybody throws a jab. Anybody in the world can throw a jab. But you know what the best boxers have that regular people don't have is they've worked that jab thousands and thousands of times, and that jab is crisp. They're really, really good at the simple stuff, and that's what you have to think at the wide receiver position. Okay, so now let's get into catch technique, you guys. So this is inside shade catch technique, right? So the DB, the wide receiver's off the ball. This DB's 2 yards away, and he's inside leverage. Remember, the inside, like the midline of his body, is even with the wide receiver's inside foot, so that means he's trying to take away the inside route. Why do DBs play catch technique? They play catch technique and want to keep this space between the two of you, simply because eventually a wide receiver has to get up into his route. So if they can maintain this space and you do all this like pointless movement, but you never actually close the space, when you release to the outside, that DB can cut off your angle, get hands on us, and disrupt the route. So what do you think we got to do as a wide receiver when I have catch technique? No matter what the leverage is, if he's inside, if he's head up, if he's outside, primary focus is closing the space. Let's bring the line of scrimmage right to his toes, so when I do give him a move and I do attack his leverage, it's easier for me to get skinny and it's easier for me to stack over the top of him. So like, watch this here. This would be considered a foot fire release into a crossover. So remember the crossover that we just went over. Now we're just adding something to it. It's the same exact release. Now we're just adding something to the release to close the space. Guys, again, it's about getting very, very good at simple movements. So he comes off the ball, foot fire, then he hits the crossover, and he closes the space first with that foot fire. Are there other ways you could close the space? Absolutely, and we're going to talk about that in these next two releases that we go over. But again, guys, he comes off the ball, 1, 2, 3, 4. And hits that crossover. Remember, on the crossover, the first step is a short step. You step inside your shoulder frame and you push off of that step. So your second step could step a little further. Your hips and your shoulders can sell the movement a little bit better and threaten his leverage. And that's when we get space. And again, guys, he didn't just give a move. Like if you just do a regular crossover and there's this gap of space and you run away from this DB, he's going to get hands, force you to that sideline, and you will not have room for the quarterback. Same idea, fellas, if you're running an inside breaking route like a post or a dig. You could close the space, give that crossover, release outside, and work to stack him. If we can't stack him and he's right on my hip, I would use my inside hand to throw him by and cut back underneath him. So you have to understand, guys, well, off the line of scrimmage, you need to keep it simple. You need to have a plan and just understand. Catched man, we close the space, then give a move. Press man, we could just give the move because he closed the space for me. So this is a great example of a foot fire crossover release to close the space with the DB and get separation versus inside shade catch technique. Now, this next release, fellas, again, it's going to be head up catch man. So this is Travis Hunter running just like a simple, like 5-yard in, like almost like a drag concept. He gets the ball a little bit late, so that's why I'm maybe anticipating that's more so like a drag or more so like an over route or a crosser. It's not so much like a slant, right? But he has this DB who's at the goal line, catch man, 2 to 3 yards off, but he's head up, right? Pay attention to the midline of his body. Midline is even with Travis Hunter's midline, so that's how we know he's head up. So what was the release that we used when he was head up press, just regular press, not catch man, split release, right? So could we use a split release, but just close the distance first? Absolutely. And that's what Travis Hunter does here. So he comes off the ball, gives a little hesitation, gives this split, gives a little jab to the split, and then is able to win on that over route. So let's talk about it, right? So his move, what he does when he closes the space is he adds a little hesitation element to it. So the foot fire is a little bit faster. This like skip move, if you will, is a little bit slower tempo, right? So he comes off the ball and he takes like a double step with his left foot. Anytime that you guys do like a skip move or you're trying to change tempo on a guy, it's about taking a double step. So he comes off the ball. Obviously, his right foot's up. He goes left, split, right? So he goes off the ball, left foot, split release. And when he does this split release, both feet hit the ground at the exact same time. He throws his hips and his shoulders to the outside, kind of like that split jab step or that split sway that we showed in the very beginning of this video. Gets that DB to jump, and then it's just easy money after that. Now, let's say, for example, we do this split release. Let's say he had to run a deeper route. Like, this might be a little bit different because it's like kind of a crosser. But let's say he had to run like a 10 to 12-yard dig, and he was in the middle of the field, not the red zone. And he does this little skip, and he splits. And let's say that DB jumps to the inside. What could he do? Push off this inside foot and release to the outside and take what the DB gives him, because the split release allows us to do that. Remember, when you have a DB who's in head up, there's a good chance that he might be trying to disguise what he's doing. He's head up because he's trying to mess with you. I'm going to jump to the inside as soon as the ball snaps. I'm going to jump to the outside as soon as the ball snaps. Or he could stay there. Again, he's got one of 3 options. But what that split release allows us to do is to be prepared for any one of those options. So this is a great example for Travis Hunter working kind of a hesitation skip into a split versus that head up catch man coverage. Now, this next example here, fellas, is going to be versus outside leverage catch man coverage. So again, pay attention to the midline of the DB. It's even with the back foot of the wide receiver, so that's how we know it's outside leverage, and he's about 2 yards away. So this wide receiver is going to be running a slant. You could work this release, though, you guys, on generally any route. You could work this release on a post route, you work it on a dig, you could work it on this slant. I mean, you could do it even if you have to run a corner route and you're taking the inside release. So this is a skip jab release. So it's a hesitation skip into a jab. And it starts with the kick step of his back foot. So I'm going to play at full speed, then we'll break it down. So he kicks, skips, and throws the jab off of the skip. So this is a great way to close the space with the DB when he's in catch technique. And it's a great way to throw a move to the outside to threaten his leverage. And you could get more power off the move because of your skip step. And we'll talk about it, right? So the first part of this release is with the back foot. He kicks behind his front foot, and then he takes that double step with his left foot, right? So pay attention to the left foot right here. So he kicks left foot, and then off of the left foot, off of the second left. So he kicks, skip, and then off of the left foot, he throws that jab. When you take that second step with your left foot, it's important that you push off of it. It's inside your frame, and you throw your hip and throw your upper body into this outside move to threaten his leverage to get him to jump, and then we got that free inside release. So the skip allows us to close space, and then off of the skip, throwing that jab allows us to attack leverage. So guys, it's really the same exact release. What was the release we went over versus outside shape press? A jab. What was the release we went over versus inside shape press? A crossover. What was the release we went over versus head up press? A split. So all three variations versus catch technique just involved a more creative way to close the space and then throw the exact same move that we were doing. Remember, guys, it's about being very, very good at simple stuff. And when you're very, very good at simple things, you could start adding elements to it like this skip, like the foot fire, when you start facing these a little bit more advanced types of press man coverage. But that hesitation skip into a jab is a great move you could use versus outside leverage catch man.